a small village where ancient stories and superstitions were common, there was an old shop known as the Bazaar of Fear. The shop sold all kinds of mysterious and ancient items, but the most peculiar and frightening of all was an old doll that had been untouched for years. The doll was beautiful, with eerily lifelike eyes that seemed to watch everything around it. A young woman named Ayesha, who had recently moved to the village from the city, was drawn to the doll. She had loved dolls since childhood, and when she saw this one, she was captivated by its beauty. The shopkeeper warned her that the doll was cursed and advised her not to buy it, but Ayesha dismissed this as mere superstition and bought the doll anyway. After bringing the doll home, Ayesha placed it on a shelf in her bedroom, its porcelain face glimmering in the dim light. The first day went by without any issues, lulling her into a false sense of security. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness enveloped the house, strange occurrences began to unfold. At first, it was subtle, a door creaking open in the dead of night, the faintest sound like a whisper echoing through the halls. Ayesha dismissed these as mere drafts or the old house settling, but the eerie feeling clung to her. The flickering light seemed to dance in rhythm with her mounting anxiety, casting shadows that stretched and twisted unnaturally across the walls. That night, as she lay in bed, Ayesha felt a chill creep over her skin. It was as if someone was watching her from the shadows. She turned to glance at the doll, sitting innocently on the shelf, yet its eyes seemed to follow her every movement. She shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought. "It's just a doll," she reassured herself, "an inanimate object." But when the clock struck midnight, a soft giggle pierced the stillness of the night. Ayesha's heart raced as she froze in place, her breath catching in her throat. She sat up, straining her ears to catch any further sound, but only silence greeted her. Just as she was about to lie back down, she heard it again, a soft, childlike laughter that echoed around her. Terrified, she swung her legs over the side of the bed, the cold floor sending shivers up her spine. She stepped cautiously toward the door, but as she reached for the handle, she noticed that the doll was no longer on the shelf. Panic surged through her veins as she whipped around, searching for it in the dim light. Suddenly, the door creaked open slowly, as if pushed by an unseen hand. Ayesha's heart pounded in her chest. She stepped back, the laughter growing louder and more sinister. "Is this real?" she thought, grappling with disbelief. "Am I going crazy?" But deep down, she knew something was wrong. The feeling of being watched intensified, and she could almost sense a presence lurking in the shadows. Gathering her courage, Ayesha ventured into the hallway, her footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. She called out, her voice trembling, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence responded. But as she turned to go back, she saw the doll standing at the end of the hallway, its eyes glinting ominously in the dark. It was as if it had moved on its own. Chills raced down her spine, and she felt an icy grip of fear clutch at her heart. The doll was no longer just a decorative item. It was a harbinger of dread, and Ayesha was about to learn the horrifying truth behind its sinister charm. One night, Ayesha thought she heard someone softly whispering her name in her sleep. When she woke up, the doll was not in its usual place. Frightened, she searched the house, and suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Terrified, she turned around to find the doll sitting on the floor, staring at her with its lifeless eyes, though she had left it in another room. Ayesha's heart pounded, but she tried to calm herself. She placed the doll back on the shelf and went to bed again. The next day, the occurrences grew even more terrifying. The doll would appear in different parts of the house on its own, and sometimes Ayesha felt as if its eyes moved, following her every step. As the days passed, Ayesha's mental state began to deteriorate. She started having terrifying dreams where a little girl, the original owner of the doll, appeared, begging for help. Then, the girl's face would twist into a horrifying grin, and she would transform into the doll. Ayesha knew something sinister was connected to the doll. Desperate to uncover the truth, Ayesha visited an old bookstore where she learned about the doll's dark history. The doll had once belonged to a girl who mysteriously died years ago, and her spirit was trapped within it. Whoever owned the doll would become part of the curse and meet the same tragic fate as the girl. Ayesha decided she had to get rid of the doll. She tried burning it, throwing it away, and even burying it in the woods. But each time, the doll would return to her home, sitting quietly as if waiting for her. Finally, Ayesha realized that the only way to break the curse was to bury the doll in the same graveyard where the little girl was buried. Late at night, she took the doll to the old cemetery, determined to end the nightmare. As Ayesha began to bury the doll, the ground beneath her shook, and suddenly, the doll's tiny hands grabbed her wrist. Terrified but resolute, Ayesha prayed and continued burying the doll. As soon as the doll was covered by the earth, all the strange events ceased. Ayesha sighed with relief, but the lingering fear remained. Perhaps one day, the doll might return, ready to haunt someone else's life. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale and want to hear more spine-chilling stories, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Shadow Tales. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Share this video with your friends if you dare, and let me know in the comments what you thought. Until next time, stay spooky.